Some more new and yet somehow familiar attacks from Donald Trump against Kamala Harris today, this time blaming her for the stock market sell-off, calling it the Kamala crash and calling her stupid and a radical left lunatic. It's a page from the classic Trump playbook, blaming opponents and name-calling, but not what the campaign said back in mid-July, that they had been preparing to go against her for weeks if she replaced Biden. And now Trump is all but admitting that their strategy is still a work in progress.
4 months ago, she was considered grossly incompetent by the fake news. Now they're saying, oh, isn't she wonderful? Isn't she wonderful? No, she's not wonderful. So we have to work hard to define her. I don't want to even define her. I just want to say who she is. She's a horror show. She'll destroy our country.
Joining us now, Maya Rupert, former campaign manager for Julian Castro, former Warren for President senior advisor, and host of the podcast When We Win with Maya Rupert. And Brendan Buck, former press secretary to vice presidential nominee Paul Ryan, former press secretary to former House Speaker John Boehner, and MSNBC political analyst. Brendan, did these latest attacks speak to the fact that Trump may not have anything new in his playbook? He's just riffing. I mean, is there a plan that you see?
Well, there should be a plan. The thing about this is this shouldn't be that hard. There are plenty of what should be effective messages against Kamala Harris. And we've talked a great deal about how the campaign this time around is much more professionalized than the past Trump campaigns. But none of that matters if your candidate can't stick to the script, or if your candidate wants to go with their gut more than what the data shows. I mean, this should be pretty simple. Kamala Harris is too liberal for this country, wants to take us too far to the left. Here are all the reasons why. And instead, he thinks that he can convince people that she's not black enough or that she's stupid. I'm sure that that's not what his campaign wants to do, but he can't help himself. And he's blowing what is the most important part of the campaign here for him. This is the moment where people are going to define her. People know who Kamala Harris is, but they don't have very strong views about her. And this was the time when he needed to define her, and he's blowing it, and her favorability ratings are rising, and I don't think he can fix this at this point.
So, Maya, the Wall Street Journal reports that Trump's team actually did have a Harris strategy. Then he went off script about her race. It says that attack risks harming his larger campaign strategy to define her. But Congressman Byron Donalds is downplaying the criticism. Here's what he said.
This is really a phony controversy. I don't really care. Most people don't. But if we're going to be accurate, when Kamala Harris went into the United States Senate, it was AP that said she was the first Indian American United States senator. It was actually played up a lot when she came into the Senate. Now she's running nationally. Obviously, the campaign has shifted.
Is Trump at NABJ a phony controversy? Could this be another controversy that has no apparent impact on Trump? Or what do you make of what the campaign said they had in place, which was a strategy?
I think it's very clear they did not have a strategy. They don't have an effective one, and are showing that they really do not have a response to Kamala Harris. And I don't think that it is a phony controversy at all, that people are reacting very negatively to what the former president said, to his feigning confusion over the concept of a biracial identity, because it's an incredibly racist attack. And I don't think it's a small issue if someone who's running for president is being openly and blatantly racist. And I think it should be called out. It's being called out, and trying to downplay it as something that's being fabricated. While at the same time, I mean, when Donalds has talked about this, at the same time that he's calling it a voting controversy, he's repeating the ridiculous lie that she can only be one piece of her identity at any given time. This isn't a particularly complicated issue. She is biracial. She is both a Black woman and an Indian woman. The AP reported that she was the first Indian American senator, which was true, and there's no controversy here. So them using that language and repeating it over and over again is showing they're clearly doubling down on it. It's not a phony controversy, and people do have a right to hold them accountable for it.
So I also want to talk about another piece of the messaging, and that is the Trump campaign continuing to have to fend off with a appearance by apparently a cat. Cat ladies. Well, Honestly, is that timed or is that timed? Because we were going to talk about the J.D. Vance childless cat ladies mark, which his wife Usha has now come to his defense. Let me play that.
The reality is he made a quip in service of making a point that he wanted to make that was substantive, and it had actual meaning. And I just wish sometimes that people would talk about those things and that we would spend a lot less time just sort of going through this three-word phrase or that three-word phrase, because what he was really saying is that it can be really hard to be a parent in this country. And sometimes our policies are designed in a way that make it even harder.
I'm not going to ask Crispin the cat for an opinion on that. I'm going to go over to you, Brendan. Look, I mean, his wife, accomplished woman, goes on TV to try to defend what he said. I don't know if it's really hard to be a parent is what most people heard, or what Donald Trump said, which is that, families are good things. Is this helping?
Well, let me say this. I have a level of sympathy for the candidates' spouses who get dragged into this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's hard to watch sometimes when you get attacked. The problem is that this was not just a one-off statement that he made. He's made this a bit of his routine. Look, I think that J.D. Vance is struggling to communicate because a lot of this is new to him, in that he seems to have adopted a worldview in recent years and gone all in on it and hasn't really figured out the right way to talk about these things. There's a very proud tradition of being pro-family in the Republican Party, but you don't do it by attacking individuals and attacking other people. And he just doesn't seem to get that. So I don't know if it's a put on or what it is. And it just shows you the lack of maturity that I think he's demonstrating. And she is doing a much better job of turning the tables or changing the subject that he's been able to. And frankly, they're going to keep poking at him and they're going to keep calling him names until he figures out a way to change the conversation.